Imagine this. 5 chairs stand before you. No labels, no descriptions, no backstory. Just pure instinct drawing you toward one. Which one speaks to your soul? This isn't about furniture. This isn't about style. This is about something far deeper. A hidden language between you and your unconscious mind. A language most people never learn to hear. Carl Jung discovered that our choices aren't random. They're whispers from the depths of who we truly are. The chair you pick today might reveal secrets about yourself that you've buried for years. So don't think. Don't analyze. Just feel. Let your intuition guide you, and prepare to meet a part of yourself you may have forgotten. Chair 1, the silent sentinel. Look at this chair. No frills, no drama, just clean lines and quiet presence. It doesn't demand attention, yet somehow, you can't look away if this chair called to you. Your soul is crying out for something the modern world rarely offers. True stillness. You're not running from life. You're searching for clarity in the noise. Your mind craves spaces where you can finally breathe without explanation, exist without performance, simply be without apology. Jung taught us that our external world mirrors our internal landscape. This chair isn't just minimalist design, it's your psyche building a sanctuary. Perhaps your childhood was turbulent. Maybe emotions in your family were landmines you learned to tiptoe around. Somewhere along the way you discovered that simplicity equals safety. Okay. Less chaos outside means less chaos inside. You've become what Jung called the observer. Someone who watches life from a careful distance, who listens more than speaks, who sees patterns others miss. But here's the shadow side. Are you protecting yourself or isolating yourself? There's profound wisdom in your restraint. You notice subtleties. You understand silence. You don't need constant stimulation to feel alive, yet sometimes, do you wonder if you've built walls so high that even you can't climb over them anymore? This chair represents emotional discipline. But Jung warns us. What we repress doesn't disappear. It transforms into something we no longer recognize. Your love of simplicity might be authentic minimalism, or it might be armor disguised as aesthetic preference. The question isn't whether you deserve peace. You do. The question is, have you created peace or have you created numbness? Can you tell the difference between healthy boundaries and emotional disconnection? Between solitude and loneliness? Your choice reveals a soul that doesn't want less, it wants no clarity. Carl, a heart that doesn't fear feeling. It fears drowning in feelings it can't control, and that's not weakness. That's survival. But remember, the same mechanisms that once saved you can eventually imprison you. Chair 2, the ancestral anchor. This chair carries weight, not physical heaviness, but temporal gravity. You can almost feel generations of hands touching its wood, decades of stories soaked into its grain. It doesn't follow trends. It creates in them, or rather it ignores them entirely, standing firm in its own timeless truth. If this resonated with you, your psyche hungers for something increasingly rare. Depth that transcends the temporary. You're not interested in what's popular. You're drawn to what's enduring. You believe that beneath life's chaos lies an underlying order, a sacred pattern waiting to be understood. Jung identified this as the keeper archetype, the guardian not just of physical spaces, but of meaning itself, of principles worth preserving, of wisdom that shouldn't be forgotten. You probably have a strong moral compass, not in a preachy way, but as an internal navigation system that helps you distinguish between what merely appears true and what is true. You value authenticity over novelty, substance over spectacle. But every archetype casts a shadow. What happens when your love of structure becomes fear of spontaneity? When tradition becomes a cage instead of a compass? This chair might represent your search for stability in an unstable world. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all need something solid to stand on. The danger comes when we confuse instability with stagnation. When we hold so tightly to what was that we can't embrace what could be. Did you grow up with rigid rules but little warmth? Or perhaps the opposite, chaos that made you crave structure as an adult? Maybe you're trying to build the foundation you never had, creating externally what you needed internally. Your attraction to this chair might reflect someone who keeps things together, even when everything's falling apart inside. someone who maintains appearances because the alternative feels like dissolution. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But transformation requires letting go. So ask yourself, do your principles support your growth or do they restrict it? Does your structure provide freedom or prevent it?" This chair whispers, "I need something permanent." But sometimes the most permanent thing we can build is the courage to adapt. Chair 3. The Throne of Presence. Now this isn't just seating. This is an experience. Its curves embrace you before you even sit down. Its presence says, you belong here. You matter here. Rest here. If this chair captured your attention, deep within you lives an ache most people carry but few acknowledge. The need to have a place in this world where your existence isn't questioned. You're not seeking luxury for vanity's sake. You're seeking recognition and for survival's sake. This is the winged sovereign archetype. Jung spoke of, not the tyrant on a throne, but the individual who has learned to honor their own worth despite a world that tried to diminish it. But why do we build internal kingdoms? Often because we once felt exiled from external ones. Maybe as a child your needs were treated as inconveniences, your emotions as disruptions, your presence as conditional. So you developed a strategy. If I become indispensable, I can't be abandoned. If I'm strong enough, I can't be hurt. If I control my environment, I can't be surprised by pain. This chair might represent the father figure you needed but didn't have, emotionally absent or physically gone. So now you're building within yourself the solid refuge no one else provided. There's courage in that, but also danger, because sometimes what begins as a throne becomes a solitary tower. A place where you sit alone, visible to all, connected to none. The softness of this chair says, I need comfort. But comfort isn't about avoiding struggle. It's about recovery from carrying too much. For too long, people drawn to this often bear invisible exhaustion. They're the ones everyone leans on, but who do they lean on? Jung taught that our shadow appears in what we overemphasize. So if you surround yourself with symbols of authority and comfort, pause and ask, what am I compensating for? What wound am I covering with velvet? Does your need for recognition stem from genuine self-worth, or from a deep-seated fear that without achievement, without visibility, without mattering, you're nothing? Can you step down from the throne and still feel valuable? Can you be seen in your weakness and still feel safe? Because the true self, Jung insisted, isn't revealed through control. It's discovered through conscious vulnerability. This chair calls to souls who want not just a seat at the table, but to know they have the right to be there, and you do. You always did, even before you earned it. Chair 4. The Rebel's Declaration. This chair refuses to whisper. It shouts. Through color, through texture, through unapologetic presence. It announces, I exist on my own terms. If this spoke to you, you're someone who sees life not as a script to follow, but as a canvas to create upon. Inside you lives what Jung called the eternal child. Not immature, but undomesticated. Not reckless, but refusing to be tamed by a world that fears what it cannot standardize. You probably make people uncomfortable sometimes. Not because you're trying to, but because authenticity always unsettles those who've learned to hide. Maybe you've been told you're too much, too emotional, too expressive, too sensitive, too different, and maybe for a while, you tried to dim your light, but your soul rebelled. This chair represents that rebellion, the refusal to shrink, the insistence that your full spectrum of humanity deserves space. But Jung warns us, sometimes the brightest colors hide the deepest bruises. Is your expressiveness pure joy, or is it also a shield? Do you laugh loudest because silence might reveal your sadness? Perhaps you once trusted too easily and got hurt. Perhaps you showed your true self and it was rejected. So now you broadcast your individuality loudly, not just to be seen, but to control how you're seen. You'd rather be judged for your authentic strangeness than accepted for a comfortable lie. There's profound courage in that. But also potential loneliness, because not everyone understands those who color outside the lines. Not everyone appreciates art that doesn't match their furniture. For you, creativity isn't just expression, it's an oxygen. It's how you survive in a world constantly trying to make everyone identical. Jung believed that reconnecting with the eternal child is essential for wholeness, because it returns us to who we were before the world told us who to be. But here's the question: are you free, or are you performing freedom? Does your uniqueness come from self-love or from the need to prove something? Can you be yourself not just in vibrant moments, but also in quiet ones? In confusion? In ordinariness? This chair says, I refuse to blend in. But remember, true individuality doesn't fear invisibility. It doesn't need constant validation. You're already enough, even in silence, even in stillness, even when no one's watching. Chair 5, the fortress. This chair doesn't invite. It endures, made of unforgiving materials, wood, metal, sharp angles. It doesn't promise comfort. It promises survival. If this is your choice, you've learned something most people discover too late. The world breaks those who don't learn to be unbreakable. You've built boundaries not from cruelty, but from necessity. Your emotional landscape isn't open terrain. It's fortified territory. Jung saw this as the warrior, someone who fights not for glory, but to protect what remains precious in a harsh world. Or perhaps the hermit, someone who withdrew not from cowardice, but from wisdom, recognizing that not every connection is worth the cost. This chair reveals someone who has survived something, maybe not a single event, but an accumulation of moments that taught you. Trust is a luxury you can't afford. Your toughness isn't performance. It's scar tissue. Maybe you learned early that showing vulnerability led to exploitation, that opening your heart meant giving someone ammunition. That softness was punished, so you hardened, not because you wanted to, but because you had to. There's strength in that, real, undeniable strength. But Jung observed that the warrior's greatest battle is often with themselves, learning when to lower the shield, when protection becomes prison. Do you push people away even when you're lonely? Do you test others' intentions until they fail? Do you maintain control because freedom feels like freefall? Your minimalism reflects a return to essentials. You don't need luxury to feel whole. You need safety, authenticity, truth into them. But here's the paradox. The armor that once saved you now prevents the very connection your soul secretly craves. Can you open the gate, just a crack? Can you remove the armor for a moment, knowing you might get hurt, but that it's the only way to truly live? This chair says, I can handle anything. But the deepest courage isn't endurance, it's allowing yourself to be tender. Jung taught that transformation happens not through strength alone, but through integrating all parts of ourselves, the warrior and the wounded, the defender and the one who longs to be held. Your choice reveals a survivor, someone who stands alone because they've learned they're the only person they can truly count on. But what if that's not entirely true anymore? What if there are safe places even if they're rare? What if vulnerability isn't weakness but the ultimate brave act? To a conclusion, the mirror speaks. Choosing a chair seems trivial, but nothing the unconscious does is trivial. Every symbol that draws your eye, every choice that feels right without explanation, every inexplicable preference, these are messages from the parts of yourself you've forgotten or never fully knew. Jung spent his life proving that we are far more than we consciously understand ourselves to be. The chair you chose isn't just furniture. It's a psychological portrait, a glimpse into your fears, your wounds, your survival strategies, your deepest longings. There is no correct choice here. Each reveals a different path toward the same destination. Wholeness. To see with psychological eyes is to recognize that every object, every color, every texture that resonates with you is trying to guide you home to the fullest, most authentic version of yourself. Jung famously wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So listen to the chair you chose. Listen to the silence it creates in you. Listen to the story it's telling about who you are and who you're afraid to become. Maybe it's not just a chair. Maybe it's a mirror. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, you're finally ready to look into it and see yourself clearly. Not who you pretend to be, not who others need you to be, but who you actually are. And that person, that real, flawed, complex, beautiful person deserves to be seen even if only by you, especially by you.